Flora was the founder of the humanities program at Modesto Junior College, and she has been involved with arts, a variety of arts, for a very long time. She was the Smithsonian's National Collection of Fine Arts. She was a curator of that for 20th century art. She loves teaching. She taught for a while at CSU Stanislaus and now makes her home at Modesto Junior College. She loves writing, she loves teaching, she loves photography and traveling. She's traveled in lots of places. She's published in Smithsonian catalogs and has written articles and art reviews for journals in Colorado. She's also published poetry and short stories locally in Art Scene and Penumbra. Please welcome Flora Carter.
I'm so happy to be here. I can't think of a better place to do this reading because art galleries and art are one of my important inspirations, and it's also very nice to see friends and students and colleagues' faces and many new faces. So thanks for this, and I will just begin. The kinds of poetry that I do are inspired by small things which trigger me somehow and then evolve into something else. So this first poem is one that was inspired by looking at someone's face. It's called Sat. Across from me she sat, her usually active face a tight mouth turned down. Restless, she explained. She finds things wrong that were right before. To combat them, she scrubbed the refrigerator and in the bathroom detected and extracted a tiny piece of food from her toothbrush. She hopes it will go away soon, this restlessness, which reminded me of my skin, how it's been feeling lately, rubbery and brittle, a thick balloon enclosing muscles aching with unreleased energy and dissatisfaction. I wanted to bump into something, a door jamb maybe, but I can't. To make myself cry, instead I play music, locate lost notes on the neck of a mandolin, and do catch stretches, which help me a little. I feel for the people who cut themselves. It's spring. I felt this way before. The next one is called Late Summer Walk. It's late summer. I've extended my walks following the shadows of trees, buildings, and structures. The high school just started fall session, but it's still hot, like summer school, attended by go-getters and delinquents. I'm walking behind a girl about my height, heading there in worn jeans and sleeved shirt. There's something self-confident and potentially dangerous about her. She's compact, but has a long, lanky walk. Where a wallet would be in the right back pocket, she pulls out a phone. We separate. Past the shadow of the metal grandstand with the plank risers, I make the sidewalk turn at the field's tree-lined end. Dust rises up from the scuffling feet of freshmen forced to run in the sun on the track. The dust drifts through the chain link fence, sticking to my skin, and moves slowly across the street like a cloud dragon, putting another layer on the stolid houses that face the field. Am I going too fast? Okay. Here and now. My father is 3,000 miles away and having a hard time of it. He's fragile but wonderfully clear-headed when he's not affected by drugs, strokes, or other bodily betrayals. Talking with him yesterday, in the middle of something, he asks, "Where are you?" Voice wavering, as if he's gone blind. "I'm in the kitchen," my voice says steadily, answering for me as my mind scatters. I'm looking out the window at the first purple iris. I see a blue jay hopping toward the orange tree. My dad's voice comes back. He talks about the yellow forsythia, the jays, and the black squirrels, rare here, for which he would see regularly in his neighborhood on his daily walks, which have been impossible to take for several weeks now since the bone break and the slow healing, with walking no longer a pleasure, which he doesn't mention now. many times I also recall something from my past, from something, again, very small. This piece is called Sleep in the Day Thoughts. Rolling the blueberries from palm to palm, I wonder at their peculiar for food blue color, the spiky crowns on heavy cushion shapes, and weigh their far-away taste. My senses compare them to the tangy, tiny ones I picked and ate for a few summers from wild bushes on rocky, sparsely grassed hills in New England. The size, the intensity, and sweetness of those berries was relative, affected each year by the kindness or harshness of the seasons. I spoke with my son last night about a class he will begin to teach today. He made me laugh when he told me the suggestion I sent him was exactly opposite of what he had in mind. This one is called Covers. Covers. I'd like to say before I forget and before they go, something about those summer days when black figs ripen and are falling to the ground. Waking up and looking back at the bed after a too warm night, I see that the ridge of covers we kicked and lumped into the middle like a third body relaxed finally as the night cooled down, restretched by us sleepers pulling them back and forth to ourselves. So when the sunlight now drifts through the blinds and we rise, the sheet and light blankets are lying quietly, almost perfectly aligned, layered like cut pastry, but loose, unbound. This also relates to an old friend of mine, and I'll tell you what happened. My friend sweeps. My friend sweeps, waters the gardens methodically, pulls weeds, puffing a bit. She gave up cigarettes years ago, though not the weed. She works. She's had at least one hip replacement. Her life is full. I've been getting subliminal messages from her. 2 cards have come in an envelope announcing shows by artists who live in the town where I used to live. A blue and green drawing, curled, a gift from years ago, surfaces in my study, and then her email address appears on my desk tonight. They bring up memories of my last visit when I was in such bad shape, backsliding. I start to send her a message, but begin writing this instead. The message being too hard to compose, and this perhaps a way I can work things out with her about when she was so busy and justifiably impatient with me. But now I want to tell her my spirit is flying. I am breathless. I need an anchor. Seeking advice for my condition, I've asked around. Someone built a room for herself to combat the sense of weightlessness. Another took to growing roses, another to working in clay. I want nothing of these, happily. I am not in want of these, nor of art, nor writing, nor family, nor anything. Just to step through the hoops sometimes, pass through the doorway of the open coat, touching its thick, lip-lined sides along the way. Okay, I wanted to say also that I am a friend and former student of Ravia Green, who was a humanities and writing instructor at Stan State for many years. And she was the one who helped me get in touch with my writing voice and also stay in touch with it, for which I'll always be grateful. And as I was looking for things to read to you, I was going through old issues of Penumbra, and looking through the table of contents, I was seeing names of students, but I was also a student too, colleagues, people, friends in the neighborhood. It was really quite something to be refreshed of all the people that had passed through her class, or at least some of them. So she has been a terrific help to me, and I was just talking with her this week, trying to figure out what was going to work, and she was completely encouraging, so I thank her too. This piece is called One Night. Today, someone I know got back from a trip to Crete. He told me that while in Heraklion, he met and fell for someone very hard and had a hard time leaving. How can something like that happen so quickly unless you wanted it to? Who would be so ready to love to expose himself so briefly to the inevitable conclusion? Not I. For me, this time of year brings tremors. It's risky. Death is close. It makes me want to jump straight up in the air like a little African antelope that demonstrates its strength this way when it sees a lion stalking. This one is called At the Modern, which is, as you know, closed for a couple more years until the remodeling is done, the addition is done. One of my favorite places. As I move away from a painting not so willingly, I wonder why passion consumes us. Where does it come from? Where does it go? It's so uncontrollable, so physically affecting, the voice level going up and down, the heart pumping, thoughts scattered, our actions producing a mix of grandiosity and self-disdain. Passion speaks here. Pain, glowing red glory, middle-age capture, loss. This one is called Elastic. Someone has just left. The house sounds different. Amazing how one less body, a few things removed, a certain length of time could affect that much. Glasses ping as I return them to the cabinet. I rest at the kitchen table, a bit breathless by how everyday actions have become events in a suspended, crystalline environment. Then an appliance kicks in and whirs. The edge of the screen door, caught on a raised bit of linoleum, releases itself to scrape itself nearly shut. While outside, noon approaches. The cars rumble by, and in the front yard, a young jay flies to a low tree branch, screeching to its companion. You with me? Okay. This one is called Engage. How do you make progress, I asked, jostled. Little steps, she smiled back. The pilgrim moved one white-socked foot forward, planting it carefully in front of the other, which she lifted, placed down, and settled as the opposite foot rose. The circular movement was hypnotically slow. Shaded by a wide peasant's hat, secured by a wide cloth tie, the figure walked this way through crowds and traffic. The clear bell tones she tapped with each deliberate step, hardly penetrating the busy clatter. How can you breathe the still air of a newly washed world? How does one get on? Just breathe. Don't think. Little steps. Okay, this is my last poem. This is a good one. Lesson. I have been talking with my students about charcoal images that have been drawn before writing, 10,000 years before writing, that were found at the bottom of a cave shaft. We have been trying to determine where the drawn figures were supposed to be in this prehistoric space. What was up? What was down? When I asked about an animal drawn in silhouette, was it a goat or was it an antelope? They called it out, adding, "He's dead, he's down." We talked about a cluster of figures that suggested a narrative, a stick man with a bird face, a wounded bison, a bird-headed staff, some dots, and a rhinoceros. The goat was definitely down, said the students, but the stick man with the erection floating before the mortally wounded bison, was the man dead or in a trance? Some hand had painted 3 pairs of dots in a row behind the rear of the exiting rhinoceros. The end to this story, they may have said. This session affected me. After class, I watched water from a plastic hose flood a sunken brick-bound garden. The waters rippled and darkened and silvered areas around the plants. The low walls around the patio had become the ruins, the first stone shelters, the first stone temples. and cement benches, whitewashed, corners rounded, became worn, waiting altars. The dying bison reappeared to me on the highway that afternoon as an old truck rolling on ahead, traveling, swaying with its entrails, long loops of rubber-covered wires and chains spilling out, swinging, jangling, dragging nearly to the pavement as it made its way with a single mind toward its destination.
Very much, Flora. I really appreciate that. You know, I was just remarking about how polite this audience is because I was reading poems in Berkeley one time and I got like 2 words out of my mouth and this woman who looked like Bella Abzug said, "I can't hear you!"
That's what I
I almost threw up. Not a good thing. So, anyway. That would happen in Berkeley. Not throw up. Okay. Our next reader is Nancy Haskett. And Nancy Haskett is a longtime poet in this area. She was a teacher at Roosevelt Junior High School for a long time. And she has been the one person who has had a poem in the Poets' Corner every year since its inception. So she holds the record.
Slight exaggeration.
Oh, is it slight exaggeration? Almost every year. She holds the record, let me just say it that way. At any rate, she has lots of poems that have been published in the anthology More Than Soil, More Than Sky, in Medusa's Kitchen, in Stanislaus Connection, Song of the San Joaquin, National League of Pen Women website, several poems there in the Pen Women magazine. And so it's my great pleasure to introduce my friend and poet, Nancy Haskett.
My first poem is called Journey. Her fortune read, "You will travel to many exotic places." So she left the restaurant, got into her car, and drove until she was sleepy, stopping at the Motel 6 in Reading, which wasn't very exotic, but it wasn't home. And when she stopped the next day in Bend, she opted for lunch at a Chinese buffet where her fortune, this time, told her, every exit is an entrance to new experiences. So she left via the emergency door, ignoring the loud alarm, and drove over the pass to Springfield, then on to Eugene, stopping at an Asian market where she bought an entire bag of fortune cookies, opened them all, one by one, sitting on the queen bed in the motel room until she found just the one she wanted, leaving the next morning, heading south, going home. Science lesson. They only live about 2 weeks anyway, the teacher explained, as though to ease my daughter's mind and lessen our guilt, as we served as accomplices in this crime, searching for insects all afternoon, overturning rocks and logs and trapping with a net, each specimen carefully placed in a Ziploc bag, sentenced to live out final hours breathing fumes from acetone-soaked cotton balls. Find samples from 7 different classifications, the teacher directed. And so we categorized transparent bags grouped in neat piles on the counter, protestations buzzing from fly, bee, and wasp, moths and butterflies fluttering delicate wings in dignified desperation, while the potato bug, Jerusalem cricket, Stenopelmatus fuscus, nudged and pushed continually against his plastic prison seal, gnawing an escape route, chewing for 3 days without food, taking tiny insect bites of clear polyethylene until at last he was free to struggle up the slippery sides of a stainless steel bowl. Such determination, but then again, Not surprising for a creature with so short a life. If you had only 2 weeks to live, wouldn't you want to take some risks? Boots. Cordovan-colored leather work boots. Heavy, clumsy. The kind that laced up past the ankles. The last thing I wanted to wear to 6th grade camp in 1961. But Daddy drove me downtown anyway to Sears, carried home the large square shoebox tied with string. I think my mother understood, knowing as we packed my suitcase that I would never put them on, yet insisting that I take the boots to make my father happy. It was often like that between us, awkward, slightly strained, somehow out of sync, my dad always hoping he got it right, and I unable to tell him otherwise, his best intentions all too often ignored, like the boots, which stayed in the box, rarely ever worn, and now discarded. Too late, I realized these boots were a lot like my dad. Strong, sensible, exactly what I needed, meant to keep me upright, not slipping and falling. These next 3 poems are all about Yosemite, going to Yosemite and then being in Yosemite. The death of the deer directly in front of us was a silent, shocking scene that played out so quickly my son and I barely had time to gasp in horror before driving on toward the big oak flat entrance, trying to process what we had just witnessed. I worried about my grandchildren, traumatized by this highway horror, but thankfully they saw nothing. Eyes glued to the portable DVD player, they sat buckled, safely, cocooned, oblivious to both the death and beauty surrounding them. In Camp Curry. At night, as we walk back from the amphitheater, the cabins glow like paper lanterns, each one illuminated by one bare bulb with shadowy shapes moving inside cream-colored canvas, voices clearly audible through split seams, open flaps, no protection against the smell of campfire smoke or pre-dawn's chill that seeps into all the corners where warmth and privacy are only illusions. And all of us are like one family sleeping in the same large room under the Milky Way. My son will like this one. An event of astronomical proportions. One summer night, over 20 years ago, a once-in-a-lifetime meteorite streaked across the entire sky over Yosemite Valley, creating the illusion of daylight that lasted for seconds, lighting up the meadow and magnificent rock walls in front of us with celestial resplendence. Almost more memorable than the spectacle itself was in that moment afterwards. Hundreds of voices shouted and echoed around us, tourists from all over the world, witnesses to the same event, all of us united in a universal language of amazement. This is the shortest poem I've ever written. It's called Eulogy. Within 1 year, she lost her mother, her husband, and her Siamese cat. Sadly, it was the cat she missed the most. Of the 3, he was the only one who really ever listened. My grandmother's sounds were the snap and chop of pinking shears, the treadle of the sewing machine and hiss of the steam iron. She perused the pattern books, Butterick, Simplicity, McCall's, selecting designs for my fall school wardrobe. I watched as the store clerk turned the heavy fabric bolts, laying the cloth against the long yardstick on the table, measuring and cutting, folding the material into small, neat squares that would later become jumpers, dresses, blouses, vests, my grandma's mouth full of straight pins as I stood on a chair while she fitted and basted, aligning a hem or changing a dart, all the while never knowing that what I really wanted were the dresses in the stores, the ones like all the other girls wore, the ones I realize now that weren't made especially for me with her love. This is about my grandson, who is now 11, but I wrote it when he was a toddler. It's called William. At 18 months, my grandson has already learned to be brave. Grandpa says, "Wait here, I'll be right back," and disappears into the garage. Alone, momentarily abandoned, taking big gulps, lower lip quivering but no tears, he stands in the backyard, holding only a shovel full of trust. And this one is for Natalie, who is sitting right there with Grandpa. It's called Twins at 6 days old. As Julie nurses, again, second time since dinner, Natalie nestles cocoon-like in her pink bouncy chair, deep in sleep, translucent eyelids fluttering. Her expression changes second by second, like taking stage directions from an invisible director or drama teacher. Give me anger, now happiness, now a grimace of discontent, please. Her tiny mouth forms a perfect O as she carefully rehearses all the emotions she will need later in life. Yoga lessons. No one could explain how the bird found its way into the large exercise room, but our yoga instructor said she thought it had been there for at least 2 days, hiding in the ceiling beams, flying over and over to the window ledge high above the floor, batting wings against the glass, blocked from trees and outside freedom, distracting us as we attempted to relax, fluttering as we stretched unwilling limbs, all of us striving to overcome our limitations. War is not healthy for children. From the nearby recruiting office, they run through our neighborhood, these boys who want to be men. Shirts off, baggy gym shorts flapping, feet hitting pavement in rhythmic strides, cadence regulated by chanting 1, 2, left, right, horns honk, people wave. I want to stop them. Ask them to think about this commitment. Remind them that there's more to being a sailor, soldier, or Marine than simply boot camp, being physically fit. That running from insurgents in Kunar province, always mindful of IEDs, is different than a run down a quiet street on this spring afternoon, dodging nothing but bicyclists. I'll read 2 more. Nearing the end of season, orange shirts and caps dominate Dodger blue in San Francisco Stadium, a rivalry that heats up after a quickly executed double play or a home run ball hit into back bleachers, the sellout crowd chanting, "Beat LA, beat LA." But when the churro vendor walks up the stairs shouting his merchandise, he makes a sale to a spectator seated halfway down the row. Money is passed from one seat to the next until it reaches the aisle. Food and dollar bills given in exchange, everything now passed back down the road, one by one, hands touching, jokes made, everyone acting together, friendly, honest, like a team of fans. Okay, last one. Awaiting the tooth fairy. When I started to lose my baby teeth, Daddy tried time after time to tie a dental floss knot around the tooth, or hold 2 fingers inside one of his handkerchiefs to get a better grip. But perhaps because he was afraid of hurting me, the tooth often just dangled, bleeding, the roots unwilling to yield. So I would usually go next door to visit Charlie, a father of 7, relying on his expertise, years of experience, and objectivity. I can't even recall his face, yet I trusted this man, his thumb and index finger in my mouth, smelling and tasting of cigarettes, so rough and different from my father's, as he bent down on one knee, confidently grasped and pulled, then wrapped each small tooth in a paper towel or Kleenex, my tongue filling the empty space as I walked home with a prize to show my dad.
Our next reader is a person who has come to us from North Carolina, actually University of North Carolina, Greensboro. And Salvatore Salerno is a person who was awarded the Academy of American Poets University Prize. He also has worked as a poet and a playwright in North Carolina, and he was a visiting artist in the Visiting Artist Program from 1980 to 1984. 4 of his plays have been produced on stage, and he is a retired instructor of drama and English at Davis High School in Modesto, and more than 100 of his poems have appeared in numerous magazines and anthologies, including Descant, Poem, Quercus Review, and South Carolina Review. He's currently working on a novel. We welcome
Sam, I'm going to project back to Sam. You can hear me, right? There's not going to be any problem with my big mouth, right? So, hi, I'm Salvatore. Andy Warhol was right when he wrote this last century, if you remember this. He wrote on an art brochure, everybody in the future is going to get 15 minutes of fame. So here's my 15 minutes, I'm timing it. Okay. I already wasted 6 seconds saying that. Okay, the first poem was written back in 1975 BC. That is, BC meaning before computers. That's when, that's back when dinosaurs called manual typewriters ruled the world. Do you remember those? Okay. So this was written probably on a coffee house napkin. It's called Names in a Book. That small green book nesting in my pocket is a province to itself, an inner Luxembourg chosen from these days. Or was I chosen, and how? That hangs in sunlight's haze. Say that we're related by moon and blood, by coupling pain. Population 50 souls as recently as Tuesday, but I've learned by now to get those numbers down in pencil only. Their lines are always open, and they serve me time like food, only in my dreams, which spill into my waking days. Beneath this longer sun, they shift to incredible stories. I'll confess to many nights when I sit and turn those pages, staring at those special names as a child might gaze at stars. I'll murmur by a candle, friend, 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 over and over softly, like an invocation. This next one is called In the Sunlight Seed. It happens to be a sonnet, and also written back in the day. It's from my book, Sunleaf, which is back there. In the Sunlight Seed. I can point you to a catbird's perch on the flower stalk of a white agave, yet I can't foretell my own child's birth, what face, whose eyes, or upon what day. I can show you where a kingfisher dives from the snags and spars of a salt-fresh creek, but I can't fetch back to count whose lives I've touched in the tides of a working week. I can take you down where the snow geese feed in the cove on slim and tender grasses, but I can't locate the sunlight seed as it gently strikes a chord, then passes. Moored to all my senses, I rock and rock secure. Earth has uses for a helplessness so pure. Something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue. That's the old stuff. That's number one, number two. I don't have. Oh, here. Okay. Something new. I'm writing a novel in verse based on. This is going back to the 19th century, based on Don Juan from Lord Byron, and this is called The Adventure of Don Yeager. It's about a California birder, and it's all the same eight-line stanza that Don Juan that Byron did. This is just the first page. I wanted a hero of the picaresque kind to flee the meager subject of myself and to fill my mind with tales that wind around a theme, one that meanders as you, dear reader, follow the through line of a theme on its face quite absurd, to risk sanity and health in quest of birds. Why do humans, who are otherwise sane, leave jobs and homes and loved ones to drive and hike, to ride boats and planes for hundreds of miles and thousands of days over all terrains, on metaphoric hunts to see and hear, to list, to write and palaver obsessively of those feathery creatures which live only to fulfill their natures? I could say that to witness new species of birds is to touch the cleverness of God. I might say that to chase such colorful flyers stirs blood in the body and light in the mind. I may say that such gazing can penetrate nature's glimmer veil and glimpse life's mysteries, its familiar abyss, or imagine it as a portal to bliss. I've labored to bring out these thoughts, and though they fall short of the answer, I'll leave them stacked up in their stanza. In truth, since religion has taught that atheists cannot be convinced, and true believers never swayed, for civilians, no answers are heeded, and for birders, no reasons are needed. And it goes on for several more stanzas. This is a new one nobody's heard here. I know some people have heard some of this before. My wife and I went to Petrified Forest, and this is from Petrified Forest, at Newspaper Rock. It's a rock with petroglyphs on it. Right? Having come to the desert for wonder and not to know, we are led by the trail to book-flagged slabs to scan with an abstract gaze petroglyphs of the vanished Anasazi. Coming loudly from behind, a man and woman of our tribe. Wonder what they're trying to tell us, she asks, with no stake in the answer, as if only the living mattered, as if our egos were the center. They aren't any good, just stick figures, as if art needs putting in place, as if judgment were a type of conquest. They left us, immersed in a thick desert silence from which we read without reading. A sun pierced by an arrow, a feather-splayed bird, and shapes that need no names. And we left them be, and to be, gladly, none the wiser. Anybody go on and look at nature and birds and animals and all that? Kind of do that? Get out there. This is called unfinished business. The gadgets are worried, they're worried, and their whisper is like a low wind. Your eyelids are heavy, my children. You're tired, you're falling asleep. While the fish and the whales and the dolphins are swimming about in the deep. The boxes are flashing and flashing with pictures we do not resist. You're under my spell, my devoted. Don't worry, you're going nowhere. While the hawks and the eagles and ravens are soaring aloft in the air. The screens, they're all shining, they're shining in a language we all understand. Give me your will, my servants. Obey what we shall command. While the wolves and the deer and cougars are running all over the land. The rulers of earth are relaxing, not plotting their feverish plans. Some earth for the moment is resting and healing as best as it can. Creatures are calling with primitive voices that masters cannot understand. All the birds of the sky and the fish in the sea and all the beasts all over the land are restless. They're restlessly staying alive and free in a fragile reprieve. Oh, are you having as much fun as I am? Is that awesome? Gee, I'm having fun. I want to introduce you the president of my Fresno fan club. He came up from Fresno, John Wall. Raise your hand. My people. John, this is for Ralph. Okay. This is called What Are Friends For? Joe Mankind, my crackpot friend, has called collect for me again. I bailed him out, brought him in, cleaned him up, and lay him down. He tricked my lover to repent, bolted my food, and stole the rent. I'll have to drag that stone again. He made me listen to his stench, then took my car upon a whim. I prowl around my furnished den, alone again with my pet sin. At odds from being shed of him, I lie in the dark and wait for grim Joe Mankind to call on me again. Number 7. Okay, time. I don't write a lot about myself. This is about, anytime you write, you're writing about yourself, right? It doesn't matter. So, anyhow, this is Jacob and his brother. I've written a lot of fiction, so I like writing about other people. The meager subject of myself, as I said before. Jacob and his brother. Joseph was brimful of himself. There was no room for the moon, no place left for the river, no space there for the wind. Jacob made a shell of himself. The river rushed into the void. The moon above rose within, and welcome was the wind. I am Joseph. I am Joseph. Joseph would say to women and men. The river, the wind, the moon, Jacob would say to strangers and friends. Joseph felt dust and life's cruel winds. Jacob felt rivers, world without end. Joseph was gone when he was spent. The moon and river, the whispering wind alone survive to fill the tale that Jacob remains here to tell. Okay, this next one is a short, again, I love fiction and writing about other things. The title of this is called Intentions Don't Matter to the Raccoon. That's what the husband said to the wife. Intentions don't matter to the raccoon. They stared at the dark, glistening road, through a rain falling hard as his grip on the wheel. You did it again, she replied with silence. You belittle me in front of those people back there. She folded her hands. I didn't. The silence was hard as the road before. If so, I didn't intend to. They saw a blur and felt a thump beneath. That's when he muttered what he said. A year later to the day, in a similar rain, they joined their names to the papers, which their children have still not forgiven. Intentions don't matter to the raccoon. That's what he said. Okay, number 9 is one of the longest titles and the shortest poem. Brothers and sisters break ranks when their sunlight presses down. Brothers and sisters break ranks when their sunlight presses down. Along with the soft barrage of dawn, the mad and the broken children of God take to the streets, while those who own them swiftly take their powerful machinery past the weak, complaining of the riches that they eat. Wow. Oh, okay. How's the weather? Here's number 10, making senses out of stars. And that's those stars. I guess, we point up here, but really the stars are everywhere, right? They're below us. And making senses out of stars. Alone on a desert stone, I stare at the million-pointed stars set in course in the firmament, and I don't care. My voice, in its own course, vibrates in the desert air. Jimmy cracks corn, and I don't care. My master's gone away. The furnaces of heaven, set at ironic spans of space, freeze above my eyes. Give me green cells growing. Show me something with a pulse, and I'll sing the livelong day. Put a tree beside me. Perch a bird above me. Place a snake before me. Only then do the stars make sense. Where the master's gone away. Through the leaf, on the wing, in the eye. We're down to the last one. In time. Okay, the last one is called Bagram the Builder. Bagram the Builder. Little story again. I like stories. A traveling prince in passing stopped at an odd-shaped hut. Bring its builder to me. Bagram stood before the prince, his head high and his arm crossed. The prince pointed. How and why is this built this way? Explain. I will not, Bagram replied. A will, like a horse, can be broken. The builder dropped his arms to his sides. I cannot do this. The prince replied, there is a cure for one who is dumb. The poor man dropped his head. I should not do this. The prince laughed. Scruples, too, are my purview. And so Bagram began. And while he explained, the hut trembled. The roof, the walls, and the door collapsed to a pile of sand. The prince was pleased with the rubble. So, it is nothing after all. But for this trick, and for your pride in it, you must go into exile. And so Bagram began, and walked over dunes to a place where rulers have left no trace. And now Bagram the Builder sits in a green desert, loyal to his son, making his crooked castle one stone word beside the next. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. This morning I was talking to my husband and I said, there are some people in this world that just when you think about them, you just smile. And that would be Sam Pierstorff. Sam was born to a Syrian Muslim mother and an American military father. Do I have to say more? It's different. He got his degree in Master of Fine Arts at CSU Long Beach, and he became the youngest poet laureate of Modesto ever. And he has published more than 200 poems in journals and magazines across the country, including Slipstream, Rattle, Nerve, Cowboy, Spillway, the Haight-Ashbury Literary Journal. And he is the founder and editor of the Quercus Review Press, and for about 10 years had a wonderful little poetry magazine called Quercus Review. He is the sellout master of ceremonies of the Ill List in Modesto. Try to get a ticket for that, very hard. And he has a debut of his poetry collection, Growing Up in Someone Else's Shoes. And Kurt, you just, where are you? There you are. You just, come on up here. You just finished, did you go to Harvard for your talk?
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe he can tell you about that. He just finished writing a piece about love. Muslim love, I can't remember the name of the title. I didn't put it here, so stop me. At any rate, and just was a featured reader of this at Harvard. So that's really Sam yourself.
First, I have to take a selfie. So this is the new world we live in. You got to deal with it because people on my Twitter feed and Facebook need to know that I'm somebody. Okay? So I'm going to turn around, and if you're like, oh, I don't want to be on Facebook, then you just duck. Okay? Here it comes. Hi, Sherlock. There we go. So now, catalog my life. So I was going to read a couple poems, and I noticed there are a lot of young people in the back. So I decided, I switched some things around. However, I also heard Nancy mention her young granddaughter's here. And so my first couple poems, totally G-rated. PG. Then the next two, some earmuffs. For those under 8 and those who are very sensitive. So, I'll start tame. And since you mentioned your daughter, I'll start with this poem. I have a daughter too, she's 8 now. This is when she was 7, but we found a journal in her bureau, and I didn't know that she could write, let alone that she had a crush. So, this is a letter. This is now a letter to my daughter's first crush. Dear Max, in the bureau next to her white slate bed, my 7-year-old daughter keeps a small journal decorated with stick-on jewels, pink diamonds, rubies, opals the color of a new black eye. That's your first warning. We find it buried under Cinderella pajamas she's long outgrown. It's a surprise to learn she keeps a journal, or that she writes in one, when unfamiliar feelings like robbers steal the tongue she's used to tell us everything. But there it is, on page 9. I have a crush on Max. Very much. And now I have a broken heart. Very much. A year ago she wanted to marry me, which was weird, but I didn't correct her. I held her hand, kissed her forehead, offered the moon if she needed more reading light before bed. But Max, I suppose it's your turn now. No matter what happens for the rest of 2nd grade, which you've been through before. You will be that boy, that relieved kick she feels inside her chest when you walk in late with your straw-colored hair and untied shoelaces. Punctuality is not your thing, I guess. Neither, it seems, is reading or math or even sitting still. But my daughter likes you, like a shotgun likes shells, like a bat likes baseball, like a chainsaw likes large oak trees. So go ahead, little man, be cute, be 8 years old, be my daughter's first crush. But if you hurt her, I will crush you until you know exactly how a broken heart feels. So, those of you who know me a little bit may have seen my newest video. No. So, anyone heard of the show American Ninja Warrior? Totally auditioned, made my video. It was due on Friday, so if you Google my name and Ninja, you can be one of the 875 people who have viewed it already. So I'm very excited about that. But it all started with doing pull-ups. And to the poets in the room, do you ever write a poem and you think, and then it gets published, and you're like, oh damn, that is a good poem, right? So it's not until someone else publishes it, you go, wow, I completely underestimated my poem. So I've actually never read this poem, and I didn't think very much of it, but then it got picked up, so now that's what I'm learning. But it starts with doing pull-ups, and I have a pull-up bar. Well, anyway, the poem explains it. Pulling up. For years, the black pull-up bar has been stretched between the door frame of his bedroom closet, where he once imagined himself breaking fitness records. 1 pull-up per day, and I will do 30 in a row by the end of January. 360 in a row by the time Christmas presents are unwrapped in December. The only broken record so far has been the voice inside his head. Do some pull-ups, do some pull-ups, do some pull-ups. But after 38 years, a stubborn boy still, he doesn't listen to the father he has become or to the professor he is now, who uses the bar to air out his newly ironed shirts. Nor does he listen to his wife, who complains about the dozen neckties left dangling as if she's walking through a car wash every time she needs her shoes. Today he lingers beneath the pull-up bar, swipes at the apparel like a store clerk closing shop, then reaches up with both hands and hangs. His bare feet lift off the carpet and slowly rise. His arms pull toward the ceiling, toward heaven, straining every muscle, a tiny protester marching through his biceps until his head is over the bar like a child on his father's shoulders, finally able to see over the railing into the game that he has always wanted to play. All right. So now we move into, shall we say, PG-13, if not worse. Sal? I thought, I was looking through my book of poems growing up in someone else's shoes. And then I saw a lot of young people back there, and I thought, I wrote this about young people, and the tattoos I see on young ladies' rear ends, because that's where poetry comes from. Waterfalls, come on. So I thought, let me think about this thing that women do to themselves, which is always, of course, for themselves. This poem's called Tailboner. Dear ladies, thank you for the tattoos above your butts, the blue butterflies in mid-flight, the barbed wire and flaming hearts across the smalls of your backs, the tribal signs and Chinese symbols for love dotting your ass crack like the letter I. And thank you for bending so often at the waist to tie your candy-striped Adidas, the sacred lotus on your lower back floating between hip bones. But even I know these tattoos weren't meant for you, because if they were, they'd be on your forehead, where you could wish upon shooting stars while you tweezed your unibrow. Or like a sailor's beloved anchor, they'd be on your forearm, where your last name could stretch from elbow to wrist in old English letters. And if they were only for you, your baby tees and lower jeans wouldn't tease us so damn much by framing your little fairy or dolphin the way a bakery window taunts us with its sculpted breads and sweet tarts. So let's start being honest with each other. You got inked for us, men, who by nature you know are voyeurs drawn to open blinds, auto-recs, and Cinemax after midnight. And although we'd like to cherish your brains, please don't chastise us for aiming our eyes at your ass when you've got a target painted on your butt. And by the time we are finished basking in your hips' winter tan and envisioning our thumbs tickling the twin dimples of your back, it's too late to appreciate the sudden apparition of the Virgin Mary etched in indigo robes and clouds in the middle of your tailbone. By then, I'm afraid it's become way too hard to treat you like a goddess. Now, that's good. I wanted you to feel that way. Because I will shift now to a poem about men.
Did I just get booed?
Yeah, it doesn't come off with comic around. You are stuck with that thing for the... Yeah, it's that sudden epiphany and realization. Damn it! I'm sure it's... I don't have one. Oh. glad you brought her to Sherlock Poetry.
I don't think my actions should be controlled by your opinions.
Right, but I can still have my opinions about your actions. Right? And you can't change my opinions. You can just choose to boo me. That's okay. But this will help. This is for men. See, I figured if I was mean to women, then I would be mean to men, and then everybody would hate me equally. This is for young men. Dear men, thank you for lighting my cigar on a hilltop at midnight when I was 16 and my first girlfriend dumped me on prom night for the back seat of a football player's Chevy Blazer. And thanks, men, for holding me up like a freeway billboard above the unfamiliar streets of our future. We guided each other through breakups and breakdowns, pushed ourselves through university doors, and farther still until we could look back and laugh at the lives we left behind. But dear men, look at you now. What has become of your kind? You once landed on the moon, but now you press your hairy ass against car windows and moon girls at stoplights. No longer can you take giant leaps for mankind because your pants don't fit. They're too baggy, so you waddle like a penguin with diarrhea. Or they're too tight, skinny jeans that fit like bubble wrap. Your balls are ready to pop. Your boner is visible from space. They say all men are created equal, but some becomes assholes really fast. Marriages go up in flames because men see sparks in the eyes of other women, and no matter how endowed men pretend to be, their little fire hoses cannot stop a home from burning down. Not even the children are safe. Your daughter calls her leather belt a miniskirt, paints her face with rouge the cherry color of brothel walls, and hangs herself like a used coat on the backs of boys who have no spine to hold her up. And you, men, after all these years, still call women bitches when they ignore you on the dance floor, as you thrust your drunken pelvis against their thighs, or when they don't turn their heads when you whistle and lick the stale air between your chapped and tasteless lips. What happened to you, men? If I were gay, you'd make me straight. If I were a girl, I'd be a lesbian because of you. Your testicles have become your eyeballs. Your dick is the only pencil you have used in years, but still you can't spell love. It's the only four-letter word you haven't mastered. Dear men, let's reconvene on that hilltop overlooking midnight's promise of a new day, just you and me, man to man. I'll bring a box of cigars and tell you stories about real love, like when my son told his whole first grade class that I was his hero, or when my daughter hugged my leg so long I was late for work, or when my wife's screams cracked the marble floors of the maternity ward, but with a fistful of my beard and more power and determination than you will ever know, she pushed out our newborn son into a macho world that needs to change before he grows up and tells me that he wants to be a man just like you. Okay. Yeah. No blue? No redemption? Still don't like me? I want to read this poem. I was able to work with an artist who you know, but you don't know you know because he drank his wine. And so this is an artist who works for Gallo, and he does a lot of the barefoot wines, and he does a lot of funky wines. Anyway, he's a collage artist. So here on this poster, you'll see things like Monica Lewinsky and Vanilla Ice, Axl Rose. You'll see that typewriter that Salvador was talking about. If you haven't seen a typewriter, you'll see a lava lamp. You'll see David Hasselhoff and a B-boy. Oh, and then you see a guy falling. And this is a cool poster that I was able to work with him to make. It's a poem called The Hotel of Irrelevancy. And this is the hotel that we all will check into someday. So the Hotel of Irrelevancy is the place where things that used to be cool are long gone. And they live there now. And you never want to check in, but we may all someday have to. At the Hotel of Irrelevancy, you check in, but no one checks you out anymore. You are that summer song from 20 years ago that melted ghetto blasters to bare shoulders as you traversed a neighborhood looking for a piece of cardboard wide enough to backspin on. Your legs, helicopter blades. Your head, the tip of a carpenter's drill. At the Hotel of Irrelevancy, a typewriter is placed in every room for you to write letters to the wife you've never stopped loving, even for a second, when you saw another woman's smile. A lava lamp illuminates a Bible on the desk next to a can of Tab soda. You open them both for the first time in decades and dive into the queen-sized waterbed. Rubber waves bubbling beneath you. This, you imagine, is what a rubber duck feels like in the bathtub with a toddler. Soon you become seasick, drowning in dreams of your own irrelevancy. Suddenly, you are Vanilla Ice, Axl Rose, David Hasselhoff. You are Monica Lewinsky's blue dress. You are a singer who can actually sing, a door-to-door encyclopedia salesman. You are as irrelevant as truth in the 21st century, as talent, as love before sex. You, sir, are the broccoli in a kid's Fraggle Rock lunch pail. You are as evil as a carbohydrate. No one wants you anymore. You are poetry in the life of a high school football player. You are morality on MTV. You don't exist. When you wake up, you realize that your bed sheets are made from the fleece corpses of used Snuggies. The balcony window in your 13th floor suite at the Hotel of Irrelevancy is wide open, so you take your first steps outside, over the ledge, and fall until you too become a distant memory that others will soon look down on. Yeah. All right, I'll end. I'll take my butt back to Modesto, filled with booze in my ears. Not booze. But for the young lady back there texting, I'd like to dedicate this to you. That's all we can do as poets, is just write poems about you people. It's okay to talk to strangers. I remember the days when math books fell like leaves from the sexy limbs of young ladies in high school hallways. And if you were lucky, you'd be there to scoop it up with the shovel of your hands and watch a smile bloom across her lips, a thank you pour slowly from her mouth like champagne into a wedding glass. It was the 80s. Michael Jackson was walking on a moon called fame, and Prince was dancing in purple rain. Instead of MySpace, we met at my locker, where real friends knew each other's combinations and the secrets were always safe inside. We wrote love notes to perfect girls who never knew how often they danced in the ballroom of our dreams. These were the wonder years, when Winnie Cooper splintered the hearts of every nerdy Jets fan, and high school strangers met in person, when they rubbed elbows in biology class as they sliced open the stomachs of frogs. These were the days before cell phones, when people had to talk to people, and the best relationships were made by accident. We didn't add friends, we made them. And pornography was the Snap-on Tools calendar in Dad's garage. I'm going to skip the next little bit for the younger ears. Nowadays, if a pretty girl drops her math book on the way to class, no one is there to pick it up. But if a phone rings, every idiot guy scrambles for his BlackBerry, that's old, scrambles for his Galaxy, his Samsung Galaxy, as if he's been waiting his whole life for that call. When will we pick up where we left off 20 years ago, when it took a second to say hello to a girl and a lifetime to forget her? When will we hang up and listen to our hearts, close our laptops, and open our minds to the infinite possibilities of chance? Look, while you were text messaging your bonehead friend about what a short little asshole that poet is, that cute brunette with emeralds for eyes just smiled at you, and you totally missed it. Thank you.
Now let's rearrange the furniture. Okay, great. Wasn't this fabulous today? Let's give everybody a